My name is Joshua Marshall. I am the founder and co-host of the Mutts Hockey Podcast, and I'd like to welcome you guys to our event. I appreciate everyone making the way here. I know the roads were a bit tough, and the conditions aren't the greatest out there, but means a lot that you guys are here tonight, and we're doing all this to raise money for both those charities, the Child Advocacy Center and KidSport Alberta. They mean a lot to me, so it's nice to do this, and this is the first event that we're going to do of many down the road here. We have a lot of amazing guests tonight, and you guys are going to see a lot of them throughout the evening. Elliotte Friedman from Hockey Night Canada is our host, and you guys will see him very soon. You'll have a keynote speak from Tyler Smith. He is a tremendous and an amazing human being. He's going to be here tonight too, and he has a keynote speak that you guys will be able to see. And after his speech, you guys can get some signed pictures from him out in the lobby after his speech. And then there's a HotStove panel that Elliotte Friedman is going to host with Kevin Lowe, Kirt, Matt Moissac, Mark Jones, and Sonny Brar. So we appreciate everyone being here tonight. Before we get things kicked off, I'd like to get your attentions to our screens. We have a very special announcement and a special video. We have two. This is one of the two videos we have, so please take a look.
Hello everyone, good evening and happy Monday. My name is Tony Brar from Oilers TV, and I wish I could be in attendance for this wonderful night. Thank you to Josh, to Mutts Hockey Podcast, and all of the sponsors for making a night like this possible. But most importantly, thank you to you, to every single person in this room watching this video ahead of what should be a wonderful night, for doing your part, for showing up and keeping the conversation around mental health ongoing and a positive one. As someone who has gone through situational depression back in 2020, I understand the importance of having support. Actually, one individual that I want to recognize in attendance tonight, that being my brother, of course. He'll be joining Elliotte Friedman, Kirt and Kevin Lowe on the HotStove tonight. And my brother Sonny was with me every single step of the way as I continued to get better and back to where I needed to be. So thank you, Sonny. I love you, and I love every single person in the room here tonight. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and let's keep the conversation going. And the fact that this conversation is being accompanied by two organizations that will be benefiting from a night like this to keep the positive talk around mental health going, but also growing the accessibility around youth sports, you could not ask for a better Monday. Thank you so much. All love, always. Enjoy your night.
Thank you, Tony, for that. I'm going to bring out a co-host of mine and a new friend that I just met. So I'd like to welcome Melissa Lowe. That's Kevin Lowe's niece, and Sonny Seacon from the Mutts Hockey Podcast. Sonny has a few opening remarks, so I'll pass the mic over to him, and go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I wanted to have everyone give a big round of applause for everyone who made today possible. The organizers, our families, friends, and our sponsors. And as Tony just mentioned, everyone here tonight, all of you, this is what it's all about. So give yourselves a round of applause, and thanks for making it out. Like many Edmontonians, I try to show up when someone asks for help. Tonight, our sponsors showed up to make this happen, and it brings joy to all of us. They step up. Tonight, you see companies, rivals no bigger than provincial foes, the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers, stepping up to be on the same team to support the silent auction. So get out there and bid on stuff there. But you see rival businesses like Kin Real Estate, Boychuk Realty, rival sports associations like Aswan Hockey, Upanaw Hockey, South Asian Hockey, all uniting because the cause is so important, and causes transcend any differences, and it's amazing what we can do when we collaborate together. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sonny, and I'm here to actually support Josh. Josh is one of my best friends, and he's one of the bravest people I know. Not because of what he's done on the ball hockey court, and that he would fight anyone silly enough to drop the gloves, take him to Uppercut City, But because Josh is brave, open, and transparent with his mental health journey in a space that's not always necessarily feeling safe to do so. So by being open and honest, he shares his story so that anyone that endures those types of challenges might have the courage to seek help and to know that they have support. When I was growing up, events like this didn't exist. The advice back then, tape it up, throw some ice on it, keep going. Spoiler alert, that doesn't work. You train your body, why not your mind? Whether it's mindfulness, journaling, or just checking in with a teammate. Investing in mental health is essential. A positive team culture is about more than winning games. It's about being a good teammate and supporting your teammates on and off the ice. Let's normalize asking, how are you really doing? And let's normalize answering honestly. Breaking the stigma around mental health takes all of us. And being here tonight is a step in the right direction, but there's still work to do. So let's take full advantage of this event, listen, learn, ask tough questions, and share your stories. Together, we can keep making progress and show the world that talking about mental health isn't weakness, it's strength. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Josh, for being an inspiration.
Thank you.
Good evening. As Josh mentioned, my name is Melissa Lowe. I don't usually lead with I'm Kevin Lowe's niece.
Yeah.
I am the head strength conditioning coach for the Edmonton Oil Kings, and also at Grant MacEwan University, I'm head of all their varsity programs. When Josh asked me to speak tonight, I was really struggling with what to say, and so I call it an occupational hazard. I went to work out. That always helps me kind of get my thoughts in order. And as I walked into the gym, one of my colleagues came right up to me, unprompted, and said, "Mel, what are you good at?" Okay. Just out of the blue, what are you good at? It took me a second and took it back, wasn't an insult. And I thought about it and I said, you know what? I'm really good at creating safe relationships with my athletes. I've had players confide in me when things aren't going well. They broke up with their girlfriend. They've had stress of NHL, scouts coming and talking to them, and just comes to me naturally to just talk to them and provide a safe space. That's something I'm really proud that I provide for my athletes. So the one thing being in sport is we always hear that expression, the games evolve and games change. We hear that when we compare Connor McDavid to Wayne Gretzky. Players back in the 70s smoked cigarettes between intermissions and used training camp to get into shape. And we recognize that training and nutrition and more education has evolved the game and made it better. But yet we still have that same mentality when it comes to mental health. Well, it's not that bad, just move on, toughen up, guys don't talk about their feelings. But you don't need empirical science to show that having good, positive mental health is going to help have positive performance on the ice. So if we've been able to evolve so much that, we don't use wood hockey sticks anymore, we actually train in the summer to get better at our sport, why can't we have a more open mind when it comes to talking about mental health and recognizing that's a huge part of our performance? So just by being here today, you're already showing an initiative in working on your own mental health or also learning how to show up better for the people in your lives, and that's a huge step in helping evolve and helping us make sustainable change in sport.
Thank you. Just a little about my story and why this event is here today. First and foremost, this is the church I go to. It's my home church, and I have an amazing support system here. Also have an amazing support system with my therapist, Anna. My story is a bit emotional. Might not cry, but I might cry. But, it kind of started when I was 12. I lost my grandma at the age of 12. Then when I was 14, earlier on, I lost my grandfather. And then 2 days before Christmas, later that year in 1998, my father took his own life to mental health. And mental health means a lot to me. It's very serious, and I didn't know at the time what that was. As a kid, you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know what's going on. So kind of that's my story. Losing my father was really tough. But in the ways I've gone throughout life, I used hockey as an escape. In 2018, we started this hockey podcast called the Mutts Hockey Podcast, and it was Labor Day long weekend. We interviewed Jeff Glass, who was he was a goaltender on the best World Junior team ever assembled in 2005, and he was my first guest. And Elliotte Friedman came on shortly after, and throughout my journey in hockey of interviewing and learning how to, find compassion with people. And I think that's like the number one thing about our character is having compassion for people. People aren't going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And I remember the people in hockey that made me feel really good with my story were there to support me. My family's here tonight. I have amazing support in our sponsors. That's just one of the things that I've learned, and I've grown to have a relationship with the Calgary Flames organization. And one of the things that I love what our podcast does in learning the compassion is, over the last 4 years, we've taken over 2,000 kids in this city, minor hockey kids, to morning skates, to watch the Edmonton Oilers practice and visiting teams practice, where the likes of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Michael Backlund, Anze Kopitar, Trevor Lewis have come out and engaged in conversations with these kids. And when you see that, it's amazing. You can't change that. When you see that smile and that conversation on someone's face, it is amazing. And one thing about sports, it brings us all together. And I think we got to use that in helping us get through everything that we need to get through. And my guest of honor here tonight is Mike Stelter. And we all know what the Stelter family went through. And he's an amazing person and an amazing family in what he went through. And I love his family. I love everyone that we can meet and the people we can help. And it means a lot to do this, have this podcast, and give back to the game that it's given me so much. And to do that tonight on this event, and we have another event planned in 2025. So it's gonna be good, and I hope everyone enjoys the evening that we have here tonight. And thank you for being here. Thank you for taking part. And I'd like to introduce our host for this evening. Please welcome from Hockey Night Canada and the 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliotte Friedman.
Great talk. Thanks very much for having me here, everybody. I'm not a morning person. I got up early to fly out from Toronto today, so if I struggle a bit, please understand I'm not one of those people who likes waking up at 4 a.m., but I'll try my best. So why don't you introduce the video first?
Yes, as I said earlier, we have another video, and this person has meant a lot to me in my journey too in mental health, and we've done some interviews. We have a very special video from Ron McLean from Hockey Night in Canada.
Recognize that view? Beautiful Edmonton, capital of Alberta. First real snow of the year. Calgary got one a few days earlier, and I'm coming to you from the Fantasyland Hotel. I won't say what room number, in case you're not a fan. Listen, it's an honor to speak with you. I'm actually in Calgary on this Monday night at the Ranchman's Club, not the Ranchman's Bar for a change, doing an event for the Salvation Army. We had one in Edmonton on the Thursday, and now we continue on with the launch of their Christmas kettle. But that's not the campaign here. The big news is Tyler Smith. My understanding is you're going to speak tonight here in Edmonton, and then you will be with me for the luncheon in Calgary tomorrow. Is this Tyler Smith or Taylor Swift I am speaking to? That sounds like the stuff of police escorts and helicopters. But yeah, you're lucky, everyone, to see Tyler's a dear friend play every so often in his great hockey tournament in St. Albert. Just a wonder, he and Kat and the entire family. The last time I was with Tyler, his mom, Melanie, she couldn't talk about Tyler because he was in Amazing Race with Kat, so everything was hush-hush. And then Graydon, his brother, was getting married, and Melanie had been out picking out the wedding dress. And I said, can you tell me about the dress? She said, no, I can't talk about that either. So I said, really looking forward to seeing Tyler's parents and being actually able to speak with them this time around. Might have to do a push-up contest. Okay, Elliotte Friedman. And Mark Jones, by the way, quick hello. I'm a Red Deerian, as you know, and we can't say enough about the work Mark and the Child Advocacy Center and Sheldon Kennedy have done. It's just unbelievable. But Elliotte, my dear friend, Tyler, his coach Darcy Hogan, Elliotte, used to say, take care of the seconds and the minutes will take care of themselves. But with you, we have a little rule at Hockey Night in Canada. We always get pizza between the early game and the late game. And Kevin Bieksa, Kelly Rudy, Jennifer Botterill, and I have a saying, take care of the seconds, otherwise Elliotte will eat them. It's not true. Look how svelte you look, Elliotte. You'll be on Amazing Race with Bieksa or Jen, I'm sure of it. Have a great night tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow in Calgary, Tyler. Swifty.
Okay, the story about pizza is a lie, but if Ron was talking about chocolate, it would be true. I have a weakness for chocolate. I love chocolate. So, shall I make the introduction?
You sure can.
Okay,
yeah.
so there's a book I bought on the advice of someone a few years ago. It's called How Champions Think. It's right here. Whenever I'm having a down day, I flip through this book, okay? And one of the people in this book is LeBron James. He said, I want to be the best. How do I be the best? And, you know, we all know LeBron James. He's a champion. Sidney Crosby, he's a champion. Katie Vincent, who won the rowing this year at the Olympics in Paris, she's a champion. But you know who else is a champion? Josh Marshall's a champion, based on what we just heard from him. The individual you're about to hear from, Tyler Smith, is a champion. And you know what? I'm going to bet that everybody in this audience is a champion too. Because a champion isn't necessarily somebody who wins a gold medal. A champion isn't necessarily somebody who wins the Stanley Cup. It is, but it's more than that. I've learned in my life that a champion is someone who has a bad day, or a bad week, or a bad month, or a bad year, and the next day they get out of bed and they go to school, or they go to work, or they just go somewhere to get themselves back going in the right direction. And that's what I believe champions think. And I have a rule in my life that no matter whether or not I'm mad at something at work, I'm mad at one of my friends, or somehow I've done something really stupid to make my wife mad at me, that I get up the next day and I point my feet in some direction and go, because that's what champions do. So I just want to give you guys an idea of how this is going to go. We're going to begin the final official portion of the program momentarily. The panel, there's 5 guests coming up here. We'll just introduce them in a second. But at the end of it, when it's over, we're going to invite everybody under 18 or 18 and under who wants to take a picture with the group. We're going to have you come up on stage and we're going to take a picture with the group. So keep that in mind. I don't know if we'll have time for questions from the audience, but we might. And if you have a question, think of it or plan it, or if you want to ask something later, if we get to it. Now, I know there's always people who are nervous about that, especially in a nice-sized crowd like this one. What I always tell you is don't be nervous, don't be worried. I can speak from personal experience. Only reporters ask stupid questions. So, like, no question is stupid. If you have a question you think of, don't be afraid to ask it. Okay, so that's how it's going to work as we begin. So let me just introduce the guests. First of all, the various panelists we're going to talk about tonight. The first panelist I'd like to introduce is the current president of hockey operations and general manager of the Edmonton Oil Kings since he's been hired, 4 division championships and a Western Hockey League championship in 2022. That is Kirt Hill. Okay. Our second guest is a 6-time Stanley Cup champion, inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2020, and the answer to the trivia question, the first person to score a goal in Edmonton Oilers history in the NHL, Mr. Kevin Lowe. Our third guest was a very successful minor hockey girls coach in Red Deer, won 4 provincial championships. He is the CEO of the Sheldon Kennedy Center of Excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Jones. Our next guest is a 2-time national champion in ball hockey, representing Team Alberta. He's the director of the, hold on one second, I have it written down, I try to do it from memory, Brar Health and Safety Consultants. Please welcome Sonny Brar. My pleasure, Sonny. Now, I just want to tell you, Sonny's brother, Tony, you may recognize him. He's one of the great members of the Edmonton Oilers media team. He does a lot of their pre- and post-game interviews, and you will know, if you've seen both of them, we got the better-looking Brar brother here tonight. Okay, and you know, our 5th and final guest, his father, Emile. Like, for many of you in this crowd, you're too young to remember the WHA. It was a league that was created up against the against the NHL. It was the World Hockey Association. His father, Emile, was a really good left winger. He was drafted by a team called the Chicago Cougars. Our guest then followed, was a really good hockey player before he got hurt. He played junior hockey in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. His name is Matt de Moissac. He's a sports psychologist. Come on up, Matt. And also, he helps run Mind Buffs, and he's got the t-shirt tonight, one of the companies that is sponsoring this event. So welcome to our panel. Remember, think of your questions. And, you know, one of the things we're going to talk about is mental health and teamwork and how we all help each other be successful. So, Kevin, I wanted to start with you. First of all, audience, who is the greatest hockey player ever? Wayne Gretzky. Yes, I heard it, okay? So Kevin played with Wayne Gretzky, and I'll tell you guys a story about Wayne Gretzky. 2012 Stanley Cup Final. It's the LA Kings and the New Jersey Devils. And the series starts in New Jersey, and we fly to LA, and we have a night off in LA. And I work with Kelly Rudy, who played with Gretzky in Los Angeles. And Kelly Rudy meets with us, and he says, Wayne Gretzky reached out to me today, and he said he's having an event at his house tonight, and he wants all the Hockey Night in Canada staff to go. And a bunch of us said, we're not going. And we said, Kelly, he wants you to come, he wants Ron to come, he wants Don to come. He doesn't want people like me and Scott Oak to come, especially Scott Oak. Nobody wants Scott Oak in their house. And Kelly said to me, you have to go because Gretzky will be insulted. He knows exactly who he's extending the invitation to, and if you don't go, he will be insulted if you don't come. So I remember we went to his house, and it didn't matter if you were the biggest, like Tim Henman, the tennis player, was there that day. Russ Courtnall was there that day, a great hockey player. He had a whole bunch of people, and it didn't matter if you were the most important person in the room or you were somebody who wasn't as famous. He treated you like you were God. And at the end of the night, he made a point of coming to all of us and saying, I really appreciate that you all came here. You're all very welcome. And I remembered leaving that party and saying, nobody is ever going to say a bad word about Wayne Gretzky to me. So I'm sure, Kevin, you heard lots of stories like that about how Wayne Gretzky made everybody in the group feel great.
Yeah, no question, Elliotte. I mean, that's a bit of a segue to you can't become a great leader unless you truly care about the success of all your teammates. And Wayne completely epitomizes that. You know, I think back, actually I'll go back a little bit. When you asked the question, who's the greatest player of all time, I did hear some Connor McDavid's in there, and that's not a bad answer either, by the way, but, and of course, if a lot of people are younger and didn't see Gretzky in his heyday, and hopefully Connor can win some Stanley Cups and truly be in in the answer to that question someday. But getting back to Wayne and a team, and you know, people often wonder why were the Oilers of the 80s so great, arguably the greatest team of all time. Sure, they had some great players, but really had great leaders, Wayne being the number one. And I was mentioning to Elliotte earlier, you know, this is apropos for this discussion tonight, you know, because, you know, there's whatever level you are on your team, you know, maybe not the best player, medium player, but the key is, particularly young athletes, is always to remember, if you are the best or you want to be a leader, you really have to make sure all your teammates feel comfortable. And Wayne, it was inevitable that, you know, he'd be interviewed after practically every game. He'd be the one guy to get interviewed because he probably had 8 points in the game. But the first thing, you know, the media would say, well, Wayne, you beat your last game, you got 8 points tonight. And the first thing he would say is, yeah, but our team played great. And, you know, so-and-so made a great pass, and such a guy made a great defensive play. And he was always deflecting all the attention coming to him. And that, which was one of the reasons why we were such a great team, is that we had all these great athletes, but we really had a common love for one another, and more importantly, a respect for one another.
You know, Sonny, I wanted to go with you there. Like you said, we talked about you're on a championship team, and I'm sure there's some days where the team's not functioning on all sides, or somebody has a bad game, or you guys suffer a tough loss. You're big into positive reinforcement, and I really believe that you have to be honest with people. And everybody here knows. We can look in the mirror. We know if we played well. We know if we didn't play well. But you're big into positive reinforcement. How do you do it?
Yeah, positive reinforcement is, you know, really taking a conscious look at not just yourself, but everything that builds the team, right? What are some things that you do well, and what are some areas that you want to improve? You know, I think of a notion, discipline your thoughts, right? We're talking about mental health, discipline your thoughts. What you think about can grow in your mind, all right? So the more you think about it, the more it grows in your mind, like planting a seed. So it's fine to think about a problem, but what is the solution that you are going to collectively come up with to help mitigate that problem? So talking to Elliotte's point, talking about positive reinforcement, address the problem, and come up with a solution as a team, right? Really important to dig deep. You want to dig deep into the root cause of all issues and go from there in coming up with a solution and come up with a formulated path forward.
All right, so when you have a bad game, what do you guys do? Like, what's positive? What's the solution? How do you decide what the solution is?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say, you know, let's talk about...
We know, Sonny, you've never had a bad game. Like, this is not your problem.
Oh, definitely. When we let's talk about when we first started our team. We were bottom of the barrel, losing most of our games, right? And it was just very frustrating because you think you're doing the things right. But then you really, you know, educate yourself, get together as a team, and it's like, all right, you take a look at the teams that have success. What do they do right? You know, they run practices, all right, what do they do during their practices? They make the most effective use of their time, all right? They run appropriate plays where they're not just working with their line mates, but with other players that they normally don't play with, right? So you start coming up with these solutions collectively as a team. Myself specifically, sometimes you need to work harder, right? Sometimes you're just being outworked and out-hustled, and you don't want it as much as other teams do. So those are some things that you can channel your energy towards and come up with appropriate solutions on how your team can get better.
Matt, you talk about the perfection trap. What is that?
Perfection is one of the worst things that we can connect to our definition of success. Okay, so the foundation of sports psychology is essentially like flow state, being in the zone. It's that sweet spot that whether you're an athlete or an artist or a business owner, that thing that you love, that thing that you hone your craft for, getting to that space where you don't have to think and you just do, that's the moment. That's everything we practice for, that's everything we train for. But perfection doesn't lead you down that path to flow state. Flow state is all about giving up the moment. It's all about letting go of control. It's all about letting go of outcome and being okay with whatever happens. That makes it easier for the body and the mind to just be present, focus on what that next task is. But I think unintentionally, like, sport really kind of promotes and teaches this idea of you have to be perfect to be successful. And there's a short story I kind of wanted to share about what that looks like optically even. 10 years ago was the last year that I was able to coach. just don't have the time for it now. It was kind of like a part of the journey to become a sports psychologist. And I was coaching a U16 AAA team. And it was kind of like a Cinderella year where no one thought we were going to succeed. We were told before the season had even started that the boys we were about to coach had never had a winning season. They'd never won. They'd only lost year over year over year. So it's going to be a really hard year for you guys. So our mission that entire year was to be able to help them reshape their sense of belief so that we could disconnect all the previous years and they could build a new sense of identity with this new team. And it took the whole year. We barely made it into playoffs. We barely made it into provincials, but in the final game, there's this moment that I'll never forget about. We were winning 3-0 with about 8 minutes to go, and there was this player on my team that we called Opie. He's that classic guy that every team he ever played for, he was the last pick. But he always made the best team, but he was the last pick. So minutes were hard. He had to play with different lines all the time. He sat on the bench a long time. He didn't get a lot of ice time. But for some reason during provincials, he was our best player. He was incredible. And because of that, I was double shifting him. Every game, double shifting him. And with 5 minutes to go, we're winning 3-0 in the final game of provincials. He looks up at me and he's like, "Why are you playing me so much? Like, what the hell? Like, why are you doing this?" And I just told him, "It's because you're good enough. You're worthy of this time." And the whole team hugged him. 5 minutes to go in the game. And that image is even more contrast because when you looked over to the other bench beside me, the coach of the opposing team was yelling and screaming and demanding perfection. And the players on that bench were just looking at our bench. And I could only imagine wondering, man, what would that be like?
Yeah, you know, I think that's so true. Like there's a saying, a rising tide floats all boats. Like on a team, the better each individual does and each individual buys in, the better the team does, without fail. That is 100% true. Mark, I want to get to you in a second because you have something specific we want to talk about. But first of all, let's go to you a bit, Kirt. You have a young team. Like there's a lot of kids in this group who obviously know who the Oil Kings are. They know what you're capable of doing. You have a lot of kids either their age or just above their age. What would you tell them about being in the next level, being a teenager who wants to compete in sports? And like a lot of us are adults here. We talk about adult sports. What about as a teenager in sports?
Yeah, well, certainly, even I see the guys that come through our draft every year now, and you know, myself and our head scout are out interviewing some of the kids that are probably in this room right now, are kids across Western Canada, and it's, you know, I think one of the biggest things when you talk about high performance sports is that it's hard. It's really hard to be a high performance athlete, and it's something that you really got to love. It's something that, you know, you have to put a ton of your time and effort into. Tons of sacrifices have to be made to make these steps to the next level, and whether it's hockey or another sport that we're talking about here. And, you know, with that comes a ton of pressure, whether it's from, you know, outer influences, it's from your peers, it's from coaches, it's from, you know, there's pressures coming from everywhere to be a high performance athlete nowadays. And I think the biggest thing for kids at this age is, you know, being okay to talk about that pressure. And again, I talk to my staff about it every day, and myself, I try to create, we heard Tyler talk about it, creating a space where people feel comfortable. And I know there's probably lots of coaches in this room, and you know, it's probably never going to be perfect with your organization or your people, but you can try to make it as perfect as you can. And I think for me, I've always wanted to create that space where players can feel comfortable to talk to myself, to talk to our coaching staff. But at the same time, our staff puts a ton of effort into doing that. And I tell our staff, you need to talk to every player every single day to make sure we know where they're at, to communicate so they know where we're at. Because if we're not communicating with them, they don't know, and they're not going to talk to us. But at the same time, it's always a responsibility of the player too. And for the players in here, it's, you know, talking to the coaches is really important too. And going and asking questions, you know, going and asking whether it's just questions about your game or wanting to talk about things that are going on in your life. I think that's where you start to create those relationships. And again, that's where you start to get rid of a lot of those stressors when you really understand what's going on.
All right, for a lot of the young people here, and even some of the coaches, I would say, when Bruce Boudreau got his first NHL head coaching job in Washington, he said hi to everyone every day. And at the beginning, the players weren't used to that. and they found it annoying. Like, why is this guy always saying hi to me? And then they realized they actually kind of liked it. And when Boudreaux didn't do it, they began to hate, like, how come you didn't say hi to me today? So, like, that little thing, like that little hello, that is a big deal. You know, for young people, so my son, he's 13 years old, and he hates sports. He's a good athlete, but he hates sports. He's a musician, and I'm the kind of parent who's like, I am going to, whatever he wants to do, I'm going to support it. I support him in he plays the piano, he plays the drums. I'm like, I'm all in. That's what you want to do, you have to do it. I told him he has to play some sports, though, not because I want him to play sports, because I told him he has to do it because he can't be fat like his dad. So he has to be in shape, okay? That's what I told him. I want you to be in good physical condition. But the one thing he said, like, my son's competitive. Like, once he's probably like a lot of you young boys and girls out here, if you do something, you want to win it. And there were some times at the beginning, like he plays dodgeball at school, and we got told he gets really angry when he's out in dodgeball. He gets really upset. And I said to him once, I said, look, this is how, you're not going to win every game in dodgeball. Like, you know, the Edmonton Oilers are a great team. McDavid's a great player. But, you know, every year, 31 teams don't win the Stanley Cup. Like, that's just the way it goes. And I always say to him, your victory is, did you give me everything you had? You can't cheat the person in the mirror. You know if you gave me everything you had. And that's what he considers a victory. And that's what I would say to young people here, exactly what all these people are talking about. You can't win all the time. But do you give it everything? If the answer is yes, then you should feel great about yourself. Okay, I want a show of hands, young people here. We're going to do some audience participation. How many of you have a social media account of some kind? Doesn't matter which one it is. How many of you are on social media? Put your hands up. Okay, so there's a lot. And I know social media, it can be fun. You can put yourself out there. You can be creative. But it can also be really scary because people can say mean things to you, and it doesn't always feel great. Mark, you wanted to talk about social media. I think that is a huge deal for young people today, so let's give you the floor first.
Yeah, just to go off what Matt said, I quit playing organized sports before I talked social media when I was 14 years old, and it was because of coaching. I had so many coaches that the game wasn't about the kids. The game was about them, and it was about their own egos and being something that they tried to create something that the kids didn't want to create it. And that I always said, I started coaching when I was 15, and I coached for probably the next 30 years between baseball and hockey. But it was always about fun, and it was instilling fun in the kids. Back in the day, in the 83, 84, 85, when I would drive to watch Kevin and the team play, they had fun. There was lots of fun being had, but it was up and down, but fun. And when they won as a team, and they won together. And that's what I tried to create in the teams that I have. And I even have one of my former players drove all the way from Lloydminster today to hear me talk here today. It's my daughter, but that doesn't matter.
I was going to say, don't you hear him talk enough? Why'd you have to come here for this?
And the interesting thing, she actually lives in Edmonton, but I thought it'd be better if I said she drove from Lloyd, because she was in Lloyd on the weekend. But it was all about creating fun. And you have to have fun. So that was one thing. But, when Elliotte, you showed and said all the hands went up, you know what one of the number one problems we have in the world that I work in now is trauma and child abuse and investigations and mental health and addictions. A big shout out to Amy and Holly, who came from Red Deer today, that our frontline, they are the managers of the programs that are happening in our building, the Sheldon Kennedy Center of Excellence, and they do a lot of work with kids in that mental health world. And there is so much good that can come out as a cell phone, so much good, but there's so much bad that comes out of it too. It's the easiest way for kids to communicate in a negative fashion. And when they do it, they don't realize what's happening at the other end of that phone when they say something that's not appropriate, or they start to pick on someone, or they get 4 or 5 people going at one individual just relentlessly. And what that does is create great problems for the victim, because that person is a victim. So I would say to all of you here, if you're that person that knows a teammate or somebody is sending something to somebody, and you know full well, you're the champion if you stand up and say, stop it. Because it's becoming a real epidemic here, and it's not a good one. Because go back 15, 16 years ago, there wasn't the social media. There wasn't that. If you had a problem with someone, guess what? You had to say it to their face. And you didn't have 5 or 6 people that you had to hide behind a telephone in your little cell phone and send all these things. So I always say to people, if you're not brave enough to say it face to face to somebody, you shouldn't be saying it. But if you're a teammate and you're a real good teammate, you're going to stop that teammate that you know full well is saying negative things to other people because it's harmful. You might be courageous because there's 10 of you that know that it's happening, but think of the person that's getting that message from you, because it's not a good one. And I always say this, Sheldon Kennedy, we were at a talking to a high school in Red Deer, and there was a problem in the school that there was a whole bunch of stuff being said on social media, and just relentless. And I'll never forget this. Sheldon went in, and there was some terrible things they were saying about girls and stuff, and Sheldon went into the room and asked all the boys in there, said, how many of you have a mom? And they all put their hands up. And how many of you have sisters? Probably 90% of them put their hand up. And he said, would you really like someone saying those things about your mom or your sister? And they all, no, no, no. And then he says, then why is it acceptable for you to do that and know full well you're doing it? And it was interesting to see that whole shift happen in seconds, because people don't understand what damage they're causing by saying things to people in the social media world. We need to celebrate the fun, the things that the oil kings are doing and creating, and the things that Matt's working with people to try and get out there and be the best they can, and leave all the side things. Be the champion that doesn't stand up or that stands up for and says to a teammate, not appropriate. That's a real champion, is the one that's got the courage to say, stop doing that, because it's not good for people's mental health.
Kirt, you're dealing with a lot of teenagers on social media. Do you have rules for your players when it comes to social media or anything like that?
Yeah, we certainly, I mean, we monitor it a lot with what players are saying, and, you know, at the end of the day, it's all of our players.
If they say hitmen suck, is that okay?
Maybe that one's probably fine.
Okay, just making sure. Okay.
No, they go through, again, with where the league's at today, and I mean, the amount of training our players go through, it's pretty impressive, like the extra courses they do from Canadian mental health, social media training through the league. But at the end of the day, you can go through all the training you want, but if you don't have the right people in the dressing room leading the rest of the group, it's going to go off the beaten path at some point. And I think it's tremendous what our leadership group does from the top down. Again, like the young players in our league, they're incorporated into that leadership group right away. And our guys get together and talk a lot about things that are going on. And I think about this going through the last 2 years of what our team's been through, because, I mean, you go from winning the Division 4 years in a championship like you spoke about, and then you go to winning 10 games the next year. And, you know, I think a lot of what we're talking about here today, I think I learned a lot about that through that 10-win season, way more than I did through the 40 and 50-win seasons when everything's rolling good. And it's getting that feel from our players on a daily basis on how hard it was and what they were going through was, again, that wears on you even as a manager and as a coach every day. But I'll say, like, the players, they're resilient, and especially when you can get together as a group and talk about it on a daily basis, it's amazing what you can overcome as a group.
Now, if I may, yeah, Kirt, I know that we briefly talked about this backstage, but in that rebuild season where you only had 10 wins, I know that there are probably players on teams this year where it's a bit of a struggle bus. Your team isn't, yeah, I see some fingers and hands up, okay? Most of us have kind of been a part of a team like that, but I'm curious, like, what did you guys do as a as a leadership group, or even like your players, the captains and assistants, how did you guys be able to like focus game after game and not get completely downtrodden by, you know, loss after loss?
It's a little bit about what Mark's going back to here. It's as an entire group, as a staff, and as the team in the dressing room, we had to create an environment where we almost forgot about the wins and losses, and it was just fun to come to the rink again. And I know it was probably in October and November that year. We had lost like 12 games in a row, and everybody was miserable coming in, which you can understand. It's hard. It's difficult especially when half of your team's guys had just won, and now you're going through this, and we're trading players off to figure out this rebuild, and you know, you have great people walking out the doors, and it's very emotional and hard on the guys, but we peeled back the layers and we said we have to make this a fun place for these guys to come every day. And we can't be talking about wins and losses. We actually took the standing board down in our room.
Nice.
So it was like, guys, we just got to come here every day. We got to focus on getting better individually as a group, and it's baby steps right now.
Yeah, Matt has brought up twice the importance of their leadership and the importance of coaches looking out for their players and promoting positive efforts. A question that may be arising from the group is, what are some things to look for, in your players or even in yourselves as a player? So some things to look for in yourselves is if you're noticing, you're more irritable, or you're noticing that some of your players are being a bit more irritable, or mood swings. As well as there is a psychiatric term called anhedonia, and what that is you simply are not finding the pleasure that you once did in the task that you're undertaking or the thing that you're doing, right? That can usually be a big telltale sign. So Matt has brought up twice the importance of the proactive approach to, identifying the impact of mental health in sports. And those are some things that we can employ, or some strategies that we can employ is really looking to see if there are any subtle changes in any of our children's behaviors or any of our players' behaviors. And we promote that proactive piece. And part of that is getting to know your player outside of the game, right? Get to really know your players, and you become one integrated family. That is such an important piece, and that's definitely something that we want to take from this. Thank you.
No worries. Well, for all you young people out there, like, I've learned that young people are really smart when it comes to their friends. Like, when your friend is having a good day or your friend is not having a good day. And I believe if someone's having a bad day, I tend to leave them alone that first day. But if I see a second bad day in a row, I'll say, okay, this is 2 in a row. Like, what's going on here? Or even if they're better the second day, I'll say, I really wanted to leave you alone yesterday because I could tell you weren't yourself. Is there anywhere else? Is there anything you need help with? Or are you good now? Like, those kinds of things are really good. Kevin, I wanted to ask you, so when Kevin was winning a lot of his Stanley Cups, their fierce rival were the Islanders. And their coach was a guy named Al Arbour, who was a great coach. And two people I worked with, Glenn Healy and Kelly Rudy, they said that Al Arbour was their second father. He was really good at knowing how to handle them. Like, they said when they were winning and they were won 8 games in a row, Arbour would be on their asses. He would be he'd be all over them. But when things were going really badly, that's when he would lean back and he would say, okay, they don't need me grinding them. Kelly told one story about where they'd lost about 4 games in a row, and they're like, oh man, he might be killing us today. And the players went on the ice and he said, okay, everybody who had fun with their wife last night, you go and do a lap. And so a bunch of guys went and did the lap. He started laughing and said, get out of here, go have a good day off. That's that. But I remember you used to talk about, Kevin, where the Oilers would have fun at practices. They have competitions. What kinds of things would you guys do to make it fun?
Before I answer that, I just wanted to say that this evening's wonderful. Particularly listening to Ty. I'd never heard Ty speak before. I thought it was just amazing. And I think there's a couple things I want to sort of, from my perspective, for all the young athletes here. It's not life and death. It's not whatever you're doing. It's at this time in your life. And there's going to be so many great things that go on beyond the years afterwards. I just wanted to reflect a little bit on the first time I ever played in the Stanley Cup Finals, and I remember being so bloody nervous. And I was nervous. I'd already played 5 years in the league. I'd already established myself. I was an NHL All-Star. But I was afraid to go out there in front of the North American viewing audience, because when you get to the Stanley Cup Finals, everybody's watching that are hockey fans. Like, all the other teams are off, everybody's watching you. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to give it away, or I'm going to do something. And I was really stressed. And, my knees were knocking, in the dressing room, et cetera, et cetera. And then I finally said to myself, hey, listen, all you can do is your best. And you're going to try your hardest. And if it works, fine. If it doesn't work, it's still going to be fine. So Ty's message, him talking about, never seen himself getting up here and speak, and he's obviously very polished now and does it very well, just throws himself out here. But the overwhelming message is there's a silver lining. There's always a silver lining in the gray cloud. So if we're here, if we're talking about sports, et cetera, just remember that. It's like, just do your best, have fun. It's always got to be fun. If it's not fun, don't do it. And you got to work your ass off. If you want to become an elite athlete, it's the old 10,000-hour thing. You have to work harder than the people you're competing with. So, if you figure your buddy's working out 6 hours, you got to work out 9 hours. It's that simple. But it's got to be fun, and you can't be stressed about it, because there's many other things in life. Now to answer your question, I mean,
Kevin was like this when he was a player and executive too. You asked him a question, he'd talk for 8 minutes about something else, and then he'd finally get to the question.
Funny you said that, because I was just going to say, you've been hanging around Ron McLean too much. It's like you give an 8-minute dissertation, and then you ask me a question. I don't even know what the question was.
No, so I remember you told a story once about the Oilers used to have competitions at practice. The end of practice, everybody would go to center ice, and the first person to hit the crossbar won. And in the middle of a losing streak, those little games were so important. Like, what kinds of things would you do for fun during stress?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, we've got too young of a crowd here, so I don't really want to say what we did. But there used to be, there's a place downtown, it was called the Grand Hotel. This is true. And we would, it was the worst place in town, right? And we learned this from the Edmonton Eskimos. And they were champions. They were champions long before we were. And it was all about getting together as a team. Now, of course, I'm not going to talk about minor hockey teams going to a dingy bar downtown Edmonton, but if you're old enough, it's a good idea. But the whole thing was camaraderie, was getting together face to face, hanging out. It could be in any situation. And the real takeaway for me was our Ken Dryden's older brother, Dave Dryden, was our first goalie.
Yep.
And Dave Dryden was 39 years old. I was just 20. Wayne was 18. Mark was 18. Here was this older guy. He had kids that were almost as old as Wayne. And he wasn't a drinker. And we would go there and have beers and have lunch. And he would come there and drink orange juice. And he would sit there the entire time. And some of us would stay a little longer than we should have. And he wouldn't leave. And the point was, he was committed to the team. He was coming there to be a part of the team, even though he didn't really fit in with what we were trying to do. It didn't matter. He was showing us what being committed to a team is. And I'm not sure if that's the one you were looking for, but
no. But you know why that's important, and I think it's important for all the young people out there. Is I guarantee to you, in this room, there is somebody here who's on a team where their interests are a little bit different than the rest of the team. And do they still go out with the team? Yes. Does the other team make it clear that even though your interests are a little bit different, you are welcome? And I think the important lesson from your story there, Kevin, is maybe you're not, like maybe you're a gamer instead of an athlete, but you're on a team. There still are ways to make you fit in, and there are still ways for you to make sure that someone who's a little bit different fits in. Mark, you wanted something you wanted to add to that?
Perfect segue for that is when you're on a team, it's the kids, everyone, if you're on a team and there's 17 players on your team, all 17 players have to feel they're important. But if you get into the competitive, you fully know that ice time is not equal and it's not fair. But it's always fair to the best kids because they get the most ice time, so they like it the most. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's fair to the kids that aren't getting that ice time. But I watch time and time again, some of the best cheerleaders are those kids that are getting less ice time because they know what's being accomplished by the others. But sometimes it's lost, and I hate to say this, parents, it's lost in the parents, and they get really angry. But the most important thing is the 17 kids on that team that care about each other and support each other. And they work with each other, and they recognize that as a team, they're going to do the best they can for each other. And quite often, I've always said, if we left the parents out of the rink and just let the kids go and play and do what they're going to do, we would have lots of fun and lots of opportunities, because no one's coming home and saying, geez, you didn't get as much time as Jimmy did today. And, you know, that Jimmy was out there 14 times today, and I noticed that you only got 3 times. And kids at the end of the day, they care, but they care more about being a teammate and being a part of an organization. There's nothing better in the world to feel that you belong to something. And I think we lose that often, that we forget that sense of belonging is critically important to kids to be accepted by their peers and work together.
Yeah, that's really well said. I've been doing a lot of reading and thinking lately about friendship and just how that's not really something we talk about too often. And yet it's something that when we've been a part of like a close-knit team, like that's oftentimes those are the things that we remember the most, are the friendships and the things that happened away from the game. And I was doing some reading, and it was interesting that when you consider a best friend isn't someone that you go to and you talk to about the things that you're really struggling with. A best friend is that person that you know you can talk to about the thing that you want to celebrate with, because you know that they won't try to say anything negative about you. They won't try to be competitive at you. They'll actually celebrate with you. And I think this is something that you can still create healthy competition in sport. Like everything we're talking about, mental health and decreasing stress, it doesn't mean that let's put competition aside and just only focus on fun. Like you can still have a lot of fun and be incredibly competitive, but there is a significant difference between being competitive at your teammates and being competitive with. A lot of young athletes' confidence comes from, I feel good when someone else is doing bad. That's competitive at. But competitive with is when you see your teammate having a good shift or having a good game and being like, I want to show him and I want to do better. And it is key for a winning culture to have that mindset where you're not being pitted against each other to get that ice time, but you are pushing each other to compete for that ice time.
Yeah, just I've got a couple of things, and this is the neat thing about being on a panel, because stuff just hits you. So you talk about that being competitive with and competitive at. I saw something a week ago. I was in Silver Lake watching the bull riding, and I can see right in the front row, Cody Kovarchuk is here, one of the top bull riders in Canada. We're trying to do everything he could to ride those bulls successively to win the $10,000 that's on the line. And I was watching him and successful riding the bulls all night, and it's going to come down to the last couple bull riders whether or not who's going to win that 10 grand. And I watched the videotape of the young bear kid riding his bull, and if he was successful and going to ride that bull, that meant Cody wasn't going to win. But I watched, you could see in the background, all of the bull riders cheering and going crazy for this kid when he got to the 5 second, 6 second, 7 second, which to them, they were going to, none of those ones that were doing the cheering was going to win that 10 grand because he was going to do it. And I watched them throw their hats into the ring. And to me, I looked at that and I went, what a different breed. And that's why there's that camaraderie there. Even though it meant that there was going to be money won by somebody else, that actual cheering for someone to be successful at your own cost. I tremendous amount of respect, and I said that to Cody afterwards. I just, like, to me, that's the heart of a champion. That's someone that's saying, hey, if someone else is going to beat me at their best, I'm going to cheer for them the whole way through. And that's what it's an individual sport, but really that night it was a team sport.
Unless it's the Calgary Flames.
Correct.
We don't cheer ever for them.
That is correct.
I'll add something there, Elliotte, to your original point of what about when you're in a slump, right? And these little things like, all right, whoever can hit the crossbar 3 times. That's the positive notion of setting micro goals when you're in a slump. Sometimes it just takes that little bit of, team confidence to get you out of a slump and get you back to winning, if winning is the goal. But the goal to winning is to actually have fun. When Kevin Lowe won all these Stanley Cups, I bet you he was having a ride, all right? He was having a ton of fun. So when you are finding yourself in some sort of slump, whether individual or as a team, and this is beyond sports, really harness the things that make you feel good, all right? Start with micro goals. Whether if you're going on a run, you haven't run in a long time, don't think about running 20K in 5 months. Think about, all right, I'm going to hit the first kilometer. Next week, I'm going to do 2 kilometers. Next week, I'm going to do 3. And you create this positive ripple effect for yourself. And next thing you know, you're not even running 20K in 5 months. You're running a full marathon, right? So it's really that notion of creating that positive impact for yourself.
That's great advice. Great advice. Matt Sundin once said the best compliment he ever received was that he looked like he was more excited when a teammate scored as opposed to when he scored. He liked that when people said that about him. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about stress, because everybody in here, no matter what age you are, you feel stress. So one of the things I've done is on my phone, I've downloaded an app, and it's called the Breathing app. And basically, it's got this little ball, and it just goes big, small with some fun music. And I do it when I find that I'm like, I just need to shut down the world for a sec. I go 5 minutes. I just sit there quietly and I listen to it, and it does wonders for me. I wonder what everybody on this panel does when they feel stressed. What do you do? Matt, we'll start with you.
First thing I do when I'm stressed is think about connection. Right, so connection is kind of key to everything. Everything we've been talking about currently has been about the difference between healthy and unhealthy connection. So when I'm feeling really stressed, and even from like a science perspective, I need someone else's nervous system to help mine. I need someone else who's maybe in a little bit better place than I am, so that I can kind of get out of that cloud, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, or the thoughts I'm having, and be able to just be with someone or people that I can just feel that sense of connection with. And basically every small moment in between, I too am a huge advocate of mindfulness and breathing and meditation. But I always think about who's the first person I can connect with to be able to kind of help me share in the burden of that stress. Not that you become a burden, but that we're not meant to hold on to that stress by ourselves. Another reason why team sports is so amazing. We get to share a goal, we get to share stress, we get to share the hardship of the season together. So my answer is definitely, who can I connect with?
Sonny.
Yeah, I'm going to start with what is stress? Define stress. Stress doesn't have to be a bad thing. Stress, there's a term eustress and distress. Eustress starts with EU, like the word euphoria. For me personally, sometimes stress helps me meet a deadline way before I would ever think that I would finish that, right? So the definition of stress, and when I am stressed, I'll think about gratitude. I'm in a place of privilege to have this opportunity. So think of your life as opportunities. I'm in this place of stress because I have this opportunity ahead of me. Pressure is a privilege. Not everyone has the privilege to feel pressure. So how you can interpret that and turn it into a form of gratitude is a great way to manifest that stress into something that you want to achieve. So my answer to that is just keeping mindful of the things that I'm grateful for when I'm stressed.
Mark.
Yeah, so Sonny said a little bit earlier that, you get into be a runner, and I've always thought stress, I become a rummer, and it's usually spiced rum, and amazing, it makes you feel really good after 4 or 5 of them. Maybe the next day you're still stressed, but in the moment it was good. No, seriously, I always think of the word perspective, because I say what's the stress to me? Put it in perspective. And we deal with a lot of situations. Have my whole life in the teaching world, being an administrator now at the Child Advocacy Center, it really helps in that perspective world. Because really, what is stress to me when I know what other people are going through and what families are living through, and it kind of makes your stress a lot more manageable because there's so many people out there, their perspective is not a good one. So it makes life a little bit easier when you take the perspective of the shoes that someone else is walking in, to kind of recognize what your stress really is. And the last thing I do with it is the mindfulness activities, and just kind of try and get in control of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way. What's the root cause of why I'm feeling the way that I am?
Kevin?
Yeah, and you can look around to find examples of why you shouldn't be stressed all the time. I would have two answers to that question, Elliotte. In my playing days, when I felt stressed, I would just run out and try to run somebody over in the game, because that always felt good. And
Don't try that at home, okay? Don't try this at home.
Wife, you can do with your husband, not the opposite if you want. Just when he's not looking, just run him over. But my other one on my non-playing days was a great line from one of the great movies of all time, Philadelphia, when Tom Hanks, if you remember the scene, was supposed to get his legal brief in, and he was trying to get it filed, and the clock was ticking, and he was on the phone trying to get his secretary, and it appeared to be very stressful. And he stopped and he took a deep breath. And he said, "Every problem has a solution." And I use that all the time with people all the time that appear to be stressed. I said, listen, every problem has a solution. You might not find it right now, but you'll find it in due course. So just relax, because there is an answer.
Kirt?
Yeah, probably simplifying, like for myself a little bit in the sense of what stresses me out. I think about, I'm very task oriented, so I always feel like the times when I get super stressed is when I feel like I have too much to do and I'm not going to be able to accomplish it. And I remember this was something that came up when I was in university, and even as I moved through my first few jobs of administration, and then even when I first got this job with the Oil Kings, and I was pretty young, and I just had knowing I had so much to do, and it was something I learned, like I said, when I was back in university. It's simple, but I'm just a list writer. This is my way of relieving my stress of understanding what I have to do, what I have to accomplish. Somebody gave me advice when I was young. It was a financial guy from Winnipeg that I got to know him, and we went golfing one time. He said, just write everything down on a piece of paper and then just start crossing it off as you complete things. And it's very simple, and that's what I started doing. And I find even to this day, when I get super stressed out and got a lot to do at home with my wife and kids, I got a lot to do with the team, it's writing that list, taking a breath, slowly crossing things off, and it makes you feel better. And my lists have gotten more sophisticated now because my wife makes fun of me, but I got these fancy pens here. They got 4 colors, so now I got 4 colors on my list.
Those are the best pens. Are we not right? Like, those are the best
Those
pens?
are the ones. So
Do you carry like a little notepad?
I do have a notepad, but I got a full-page one in my office that I carry in my backpack all the time, and I got 4 corners, and I write everything out in 4 different sections of things I have to accomplish. I feel, and I add and I delete from it every week.
Okay, I want to tell you some things about what he just talked about, Kirt just talked about. So for years, people have been telling me to journal, because they say someday you're going to want to write a book, and you're going to have to remember those stories. So this year, at the start of the summer, I said, I'm going to start journaling. Finally, it took me 54 years. I finally did it. I got to tell you, you do not understand how much it makes me feel better. Towards the end of every day, I sit down for about 10 minutes. I have one of those day planner books, and I write about 5 or 10 points. This is what I did today. This is what I got to do tomorrow. And one of the first things I do when I wake up is I check that book, and I say, okay, this is what I got to do today. Same thing, Kirt. Like, I can tell you, for me, that is like a 5th deck home run. Like, that is, so I would tell all of you out there, if you're not sure what Kirt's talking about, just try it for a week. You will be amazed at how much better you feel. It is great advice.
How many times do you have chocolate written down.
Chocolate is there. Chocolate is in permanent marker. It's every day. Chocolate. So Joshua, who you heard talk here, he heard me say on the podcast, I love chocolate. There's like a mountain of chocolate back there, Joshua. You're great.
Not anymore. I gave it to all the girls in the back room.
Oh, that's good. I could share. I'm not selfish. I could share. You know, Matt, I wanted to ask you this one first. And in this crowd, there's going to be a lot of people here, and there's no shame in this. There is no shame in this that don't necessarily like asking for help. They like to solve their problems themselves. I'm a lot like that too. I don't like to ask for help a lot. So, Matt, you probably come across a lot of these people. How do you help people who don't like to ask for help? Because we all come across them.
I mean, I'm guilty too. Like, even though I'm a sports psychologist and I've kind of committed my whole life to this, I will wait till the last possible second, usually before I ask for help. And it's something that, like, even with my own therapist, is something that I'm still trying to work on and improve. So it's not easy, but I would say one of the most common reasons why it's difficult for especially young athletes to ask for help is one of two reasons. One, because you think that you're weak because you're stressed. I saw some head nods. That's a lie, right? You're not weak for telling someone that you're not okay, and I'll circle back to that. And secondly, and this is kind of the narrative that I grew up with unintentionally, it wasn't someone told me, just what my brain learned through the difficult childhood that I had, is that we sometimes live this lie of, I don't want to be a burden to other people. I don't want to bother my mom or my dad or my best friend with my stress because they got struggles too. So I don't want to put my stuff on them. And there's a lot of things I've learned the last couple of years that have kind of helped kind of really eliminate the strength of that negative belief. And one was kind of learning in marriage that, you know, as the masculine dude in the marriage, I needed to be the rock. I needed to not show stress. I needed to not show that I was hurting or that I was feeling bad any day. And then what ended up happening in my marriage is that my wife started to feel like she was unnecessary. I wasn't letting her in. It is a pleasure to be a part of someone's struggle. You know that they trust you when they ask for help. But here's a stat that I think it's important for you guys to know to maybe make it easier to ask for help. 30 to 35% of elite athletes struggle with mental health. 30 to 35. I love sports. That's why I'm a sports psychologist. I'm not saying that sports is bad. Sports is fantastic. But 30 to 35% struggle. My favorite research study that came out a couple years ago was the easiest study known to mankind. They just strapped a person up with wires. They looked at their brain to see, like, someone who was really hurting, someone who was depressed, someone who was anxious. And the only thing that they had to do in the study was to just say these words, I'm not okay. And every single time someone in the study said that, their stress level immediately dropped. That's why my answer to your question about stress was connection. When we can be with someone else when we're hurting, immediately our stress decreases. So that narrative of feeling that you're weak or that you're a burden, they're not true. Because that person beside you might be going through the same thing.
So Sonny and Mark, you guys both work in similar fields. Like, do you see a lot of people that don't want to ask for help, and how do you convince them that? I think that message, it's not weak to ask for help, from Matt is an excellent message. How do you guys work with people who, men or women, who don't like asking for help and getting them there?
Yeah, definitely. To promote Matt's point, you're not weak. You're actually strong. You're actually showing a sense of strength by knowing that you're in a vulnerable state and you're not in your homeostatic state, and you want to get not just better, but become the best version of yourself. There is this notion of, all right, I can do this on my own. Other people must be doing it on their own. No, a lot of people are going through a lot of things in life. Could be similar to what you're going through. It could be different. And there is a power to reaching out and seeing what the expertise has to offer. I can share a personal experience. Last year, November, people in my life will tell you that I am one of the strongest people that they know. And I reached out to 811 because I needed help. All right? That shows strength in doing that. and being able to do that. And I can promise you right now, I am the best version of myself than I've ever been, and I probably wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for making that call, right? It doesn't matter if you're a subject matter expert in the field, like Matt attested. Everyone is human first. You're human first. And to recognize that you're not in a normal homeostatic state or not in your normal state that you want to operate in is a strength. It's not a weakness. So really promoting that piece of this is a strength. You coming forward, Joshua Marshall sharing his stories, that is a strength because he knows that he can impact others who may be going through the same thing. So the goal is to be united on a collective front.
Before you go there, Mark, I can also tell that Sonny is a very strong man because he's got a great pair of dress shoes on. He's wearing white socks. Like, you got to be a strong person to pull that off, okay? So if he can ask for help, anybody can ask for help.
I was seeing if you'd notice, Elliotte.
Yeah, I was staring at them for a while there. That's like...
Just testing you.
Our stylist would fire me if I did that. Mark?
Well, the solution to that is not have a stylist, so.
There you go. That's true. That is I need one. I need one. Mark, you're up.
True enough. I think it's about letting people understand that it's okay to be vulnerable and that not everything in the world is perfect. But I'm also realistic enough to know that I'm not an expert that's going to be able to get them to where they need to be. But I can encourage them where they need to go. That's where we rely on people like the Hollies and Amy's of the world that have teams that are built around acceptance of people and their vulnerability. Because if they recognize, I mean, you think of the story of the buffalo, and all you kids remember this, human beings and all other animals, when there's a storm or there's something in the way, we turn and go away from it. But if you ever watch a buffalo does the exact opposite. The buffalo goes straight into the storm because it recognizes once it gets through that storm, there's better times ahead. And that's what we try to tell people, kids, adults, it doesn't matter who you are, be a buffalo. Because you face your problems head on, and there's always better things on the other side when you put your mind to it and you put all your support systems in there. But I rely on a great support system that not only helps me in my vulnerable times, but all those people around me. And it's a tremendous thing and a tremendous thing to feel when you've got a team of people that are willing to help everybody.
But not lightning. We don't go into lightning, do we?
No, we do not go into lightning, but a buffalo will.
I don't want to put Kevin and Kirt too much on the spot here, but like in a dressing room, was there something, Kevin, you remember from your playing days, or Kirt, Kevin, you were obviously a manager and a coach too, or Kirt from your playing days, or as a manager or a coach, where you saw something in a dressing room where you were surprised that a player would say that or do that, and then when it was over, you were like, wow, did that help us in a really positive way?
Well, I'm not sure if this answers it exactly, but I wanted to touch on a little bit about another great Oiler, all-time Oiler, Mark Messier, and there's this perception of Messier being a rough and tough guy, and there's a story out there it's folklore really that some young player threw his jersey on the floor and Messier grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and said, you never do that to the Oilers jersey, but it was just the opposite. He led by example. When the player walked back to his stall, he casually walked over, got his jersey, and put it where it was supposed to be, and didn't say anything, just went and sat down, and of course that young player saw that. So I mean that's more an answer about leadership than what you're looking for. But it's so important. I imagine there's some young athletes in here that aren't in team sports, so a little less relevant. My wife was a downhill skier. She won a couple medals for Canada a long time ago. And she used to hear us talk, when we'd get together, the players, and she just couldn't believe the camaraderie and the interaction and the messaging that we had amongst each other. But again, that's happening all the time, and you got to treat it with respect all the time. You got to be Messier, never yelled at a player in the dressing room. I played with him for 14 or 15 years. I never heard him once raise his voice at a teammate. And again, arguably the greatest leader in pro sports history.
I can't believe you're telling me the media got something wrong. Like, that never happens.
It's always a good story.
Kirt, is there anything you remember, like you saw and you said, wow, like that was... By the way, Kirt played university at the University of Waterloo. I went to Western, and the students at Waterloo used to call us the Purple Satan. So I always laugh when I see someone from Waterloo. Anything you remember from your days that stood out?
Yeah, I remember when I got traded from Kelowna to Regina. It was a kind of an interesting time in Regina. They had a bunch of players on the team that had got caught kind of going out after curfew, and the GM was pissed off, and he just decided we're going to make a bunch of trades here in the next 2 weeks and bring some guys in. And I remember there's about 5 of us that got traded there, probably in the span of 2 weeks. I remember we had got there. We had probably been there for 2 to 3 weeks ourselves, and we were a pretty good team leading the conference, and we were playing just okay. And I remember we had a player on our team. He was the captain of our team. His name was Logan Pyatt, and he was drafted by the Wings. Really good, played in the World Juniors for Team Canada. On that, he was a very skilled defenseman at the time. I remember we were playing a game in Swift Current, and they were our rivals at that time. Moissac wasn't very good, and I remember he got hit and broke his nose in the game, and guys are kind of giving him the gears in between the period. He's got the big nose. He's going to battle it through. He's got the bubble on. And we end up going out and winning the game that night. And he came off, and we're all sitting there. Nobody really knows him. A lot of the new guys didn't know him that well, but he's our captain. And I remember he was sitting in the room, and he was crying about us winning this game. And he just started talking. He addressed the group and just started talking about how happy he was that we won and how happy he was that we had people here that wanted to win. And he kind of went into a little bit of a story about, how hard it's been just for their team and how hard it's been for him to try to lead a group of people that weren't necessarily bought in. And again, watching your leader kind of lead the charge like this and show such emotion, I felt like, for me as a player, I was like, holy smokes, I just got here and this guy's crying with a broken nose and a bubble on his face. But I felt in that moment, it really brought our group together as a team. And that's a lot of vulnerability he showed in that situation right there. And especially when you're a captain and an NHL drafted guy, I'll always remember that.
And it worked for the team? Like, it really galvanized everybody?
Yeah, we did. We ended up, with the rest of the way, we won the division. We won the first round of the playoffs and then lost to Medicine Hat, and they went on to go to the Memorial Cup. So yeah, it helped our group.
It's okay. I'm going to just open it up for questions if anybody wants in a couple seconds. I did want to discuss a bit of social media that Mark talked about before. I have a lot of expertise in this area, and there's a message I specifically like to give to young people. So I'm very fortunate that there's, for whatever reason, there's a lot of people who follow me. I have 850,000 followers on X, and I have 45,000 on Instagram, and that's enough for me. I'm not going on TikTok. I'm not going on anything else because it's like 2 social media platforms is enough. But I get a lot of people who ask me, like, do you get a lot of abuse or terrible things about you? And the answer is yes. As Mark talked about before, there's a lot of brave people out there when they don't think they're ever going to have to answer for anything. And people say it shouldn't happen, and they're right, it shouldn't happen, but it does. And unfortunately, it's kind of a fact of life that it does. And, I have a really thick skin, but it gets challenged from time to time. So I get people who ask me, like, how do you deal with it so it doesn't get you down? So I wanted to share some of the advice that I give. Number one, and I've been told some terrible stuff before. When I was heavier than I am now, I got a lot of jokes about my weight. I get a lot of jokes, or not even jokes, I get a lot of comments about my background, stuff like that. So that stuff doesn't really bother me. It's morons. You can't do it. And I think I also tell young people who go into sports media or want to become public figures, and so many people want to be public figures now, you have to understand the fact that if you're going to put yourself out there, your greatest successes are going to be seen by everyone, but so are your greatest failures. I've had really tough moments as a broadcaster, no different than any of the moments that any of these people have had as players or you're going to have as players. But everybody sees them, so you have to deal with that. And I always tell people, before you put yourself out there, understand that everyone's going to see your best days and your worst days. And you have to accept that if you're going to put yourself out there. But some of the things I do, and I really think it's important, is I tell people, on X, you can set up a filter. And there are filters of words that you can block. And I don't think there's any shame or any weakness in saying, I don't like this word being said about me, so I'm going to put it in the filters that I never see it. There's nothing wrong with that. You wouldn't let anybody in your classroom, on your team, on your street, on your social club, whatever it is, say a word like that to you. Why should you have to put up with it online? So set a filter, block it out of your world. Number two, and I think this is very important, limit the amount of people whose opinions really matter to you. Okay, so in my life, whose opinion matters to me? My wife's opinion matters to me. My wife is a great partner. She puts up with all my stupidity. And also, she is the best in the world at looking at me and telling me, Elliotte, you're being a complete idiot. Like, just get back to being who you're supposed to be. So her opinion matters. My employers, my bosses, their opinion matters because they're my employers. I have to listen to what they say, no matter what, even if I don't always agree with it. Like people like Ron, like Kevin Bieksa, like David Amber, like they're good friends of mine. Even though Kevin is like at times the most annoying person in the world, he is a great human being and he always means well. If he tells me I'm wrong or he gives me a critique, I know it's coming from a very good place. And also, I have a group of friends. Last night, we played cards. We try to play every couple months. We've been friends since high school. I know that if they tell me something, it's coming from the right place. So I think when it comes to social media here and there, it's a big world out there, and you're going to hear a lot of things you don't like to hear. There's no shame in creating a filter which blocks words. There's no shame in ignoring someone who doesn't matter. And also, if like some people think like it's weakness if they block someone or mute someone, it's not. You wouldn't, if someone was that toxic in your life, you would cut them out in person. Why would it be any different with someone you don't know online? So those are the, like that, and also too, I'll tell you one other thing. I have a rule. It's the 10-second rule, okay? And it's not like dropping food on the floor. The 10-second rule is if I'm writing something that isn't a trade, like if it's a personal thing or something else, I write it out, and before I either press send on X or on Instagram, I look at it for 10 seconds. And if after 10 seconds I'm like, this isn't a good idea, I erase it. The 10-second rule has probably saved my job about 50 times. So that is a piece of advice I would give you all too. Okay, does anyone, we have a few minutes left, does anybody have a question they want to ask? The light's in my eyes, so I really can't see. Does someone have a question they want to ask? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? I see somebody back there. Yes? Sorry, what's your name? Hotchin? Hotchin, okay. So the question was, is there any social media platform that I prefer you have? I would just say not have. Oh, not have. That's a great question. I would just say, like, the thing is, like, I would just say don't do anything you don't enjoy. Like if you know a bunch of people that are on somewhere and you feel you're only on there because other people have it but you don't like it, erase it. It's not worth it for you. And I would say, so do anything you enjoy. And I'll tell you something too. Like when I was younger, I was really stiff. Now I'm a lot more fun than I used to be. Like, don't hesitate to try new things. But if you don't like it, erase it. I'll tell you a story about Lou Lamoriello. This is one of my favorite stories. When Lou Lamoriello was the president of Toronto Maple Leafs, he went into a meeting once and there was a person in there and they were like stressed out. And Lamoriello said, "What's bothering you?" And he goes, "I got this email and it's driving me crazy." And Lamoriello says, "Can I see it?" And he goes, "Sure." And Lamoriello erased the email from the guy's phone. And the guy goes, "Well, what did you do that for?" He goes, "It's not going to bother you anymore." That was good advice.
Yeah, if I could just one of the things that kids want to be on that social media, it's FOMO. It's the fear of missing out on something. But I can promise you, I've been around social media for a long time, and I don't think I've really ever missed anything by not being on it. And if you're on your social media, you're on your phone, and it becomes so important to you that you need to be on it all the time. That is, you can't put it down. You have a problem. And that problem is you need to put that phone down. And parents, you need to be strong enough to say to your kids, you don't need your phone. And the one other thing I'd say to every parent in this room tonight, never should a child go to bed with a phone in their room, ever. Never. It should never happen. And if you're letting it happen, you're just creating the problem in your home. So kids can go without a phone. It's not going to be the end of the world. Just go back to the year 2000. Nobody had a phone.
Oh, Mark, the parents love you, Mark. The parents love you in this room.
You know what? Honestly, kids, if you really, really analyzed it, you would love it too, because go outside and play. Go to the outdoor rink. Go in your front of your street and play street hockey. Go out there and do something, and don't worry about who's saying what on a social media network. Just go out and create your own fun. When I was a kid, we walked to school uphill both ways.
That's right.
Just remember that.
Mark has just revealed his age. He's 1,046 years old.
No,
Does anybody else have a question?
What was really exciting is I found out that Kevin Lowe's older than I am. I really liked it. Not by much.
It happens.
You can't tell. All right. Anyone else have a question? Yes, sir. I see you here in a white hoodie. What's your name? Ridley. I love names. Okay, so Ridley's question, for those who didn't hear it, it's a great question. Ridley, who's wearing an Oregon Ducks sweatshirt, he competed at the Olympic trials, and he didn't do very well. What do you compete in, Ridley? Decathlon. Wow, that's, Ridley, first of all, you may think that, before anybody up here opens their mouth, I just want to say, if you made it to the Olympic trials in decathlon, man, how old are you? 19. I couldn't even finish the 10 events in the decathlon. I'm 54. I don't want to hear about failure. But guys, what advice would you guys give Ridley?
Always be a duck. That's what I'd tell you. I talked to Ridley earlier, and I didn't realize that was your connection to the University of Oregon, because it's probably got one of the best track reputations anywhere. First place that the 4-minute mile was ever made, and I'm a University of Oregon Duck. So, you know what I would always say is just always keep focused and keep going, because along the way there's ups and downs. You cannot have your peak too high, and you can't have your valley too low. Just consistency, and I know Kevin, being a professional athlete, would say the same thing. You can't, when you're exuberant when you're up here, and you're not so great when you're down here, but it's even keel, steady Freddy wins the race, right?
Yeah, young person, lots of time ahead. That's a key one. I learned that in my first year when I struggled a little bit, and a veteran player said, listen, if you're going to last in this game, you got to remember one thing. You can't let your highs take you too high and your lows take you too low. But with that in mind, it's the effort, it's the commitment, it's the, whatever you did previously to get where you were, you got to double that, triple that, and you learn from the previous experience, and typically if you got the talent and the inner fortitude to continue on, you're going to have success.
I'm going to get all therapist just for a second, because sometimes certain failures are just extra sticky. Certain moments, no matter what you do, no matter what you try, no matter how much you try to journal about it or meditate on it or move forward, it's just stuck in your brain. And what I would recommend is there is this specific thing that sports psychologists are doing a lot with their athletes now called EMDR. It's a fancy acronym, but essentially it allows an athlete to be able to reprocess a moment from the past that really hurt, like a big loss or a big moment of failure, so that you can permanently process through the emotions of that event, so that your brain randomly, out of nowhere, at 3 in the morning, just stops bringing you that moment. We now know and understand how to help memories just kind of stay in the past, so that your brain isn't worried anymore that you might fail again. So there are some really cool things that sports psychologists are able to do to get those really sticky moments behind us, because it's okay to feel as bad as you do, because it was a big moment. All moments should try to be the same, but it was a big moment. And so there's no shame in trying to get someone fancy to get you to kind of help your brain. We work there.
Does anybody else want to just mention
Yeah,
it, Ridley?
I'll add
Go
to
ahead,
that.
Si.
I think Elliotte's reaction to what you mentioned was a good natural indicator. You also mentioned that it was a failure. I think it's really important how you speak to yourself. Look at what you're doing. You're doing the decathlon at the Olympic trials at 19 years old. That is absolutely amazing. Like, let's give him a round of applause. So it's having that reminder of what you're doing is amazing, and don't look at it as a failure. Shift your perspective, right? Think of it as a test. Think of any challenges that we face in life as a test. Perhaps it's just a test that you're going to come back 10 times stronger. That's why that happened. So just know that you're special and you're going to do amazing, Ridley. I promise you.
Yeah, Ridley, I would just say this, how many people are in Canada? 30 million, right? How many 19-year-olds were competing in a decathlon at the Olympic trials? 1? 6? Even if it's 6, that's pretty freaking good. That's 6 of 30 million. That makes you 1 of 6 of 30 million. That's really good. And I'll tell you something else you have to know. I guarantee to it that you treat yourself worse over it than the rest of Canada would. And I know what you're like, because like I said, I have mucked up on national television at big times. And you think that everyone is looking at you. When everyone looks at you, they just see that. Nah. People move on with their lives. They forget. You have to let yourself go too. And we'll see you in 2028, okay? All right, good luck, Ridley. I saw someone had a hand over here. Was I right? Yeah, I think right here. We'll do last one right here. Right there? Yeah, I'm putting it right there. Is it nervous going up on stage? What's your name? Rylan? Is anyone here nervous up on stage?
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
We think of being nervous as something bad. Being nervous in anything that you do shows that you care. Kevin Lowe talked about him being in the game for 5 years and then playing the Stanley Cup final and being nervous. Knees were jittery. Being nervous is not a bad thing. Being nervous shows that you care, and that is a good thing. So never take that away from yourself.
Rylan, would you be nervous coming up here? Come here. Come here.
Let's go, Rylan.
Come up on the stage. Stand right here. Is it that bad? No. All right. Good job, Rylan. All right, we got to wrap up here. Before I go, I want to get. Has anybody not said anything they really wanted to say?
I do want to give a shout out to Josh, because
Sure.
Josh came. Yeah. It was an idea that Josh had about a year and a half ago and talked about it, and I know it's been a lot of work and a lot of people involved trying to make things go as smoothly as possible. But the other thing I always say is it's important, if there's anyone in here that was a sponsor of this night, if you could just stand up where you're at, because I think it's important that we recognize our sponsors, because I know there are sponsors out in the crowd here somewhere.
I see somebody there. I see back there.
Yeah.
Right here, right here.
So in recognizing in what we do, these things don't happen without sponsors. And what I always say to people is the more in life that you can be a difference maker, helps kids and vulnerable children all over this province. So keep being those people.
Okay, so great stuff. And so we just want to ask all the kids to come up. We're going to do a picture. So Riley, you get to come up on stage again a second time. But come on up, and we're going to do a photo with the group. Thanks very much, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you so much.